it's a new era in CFP to start off this year, put on full display.
My take on this game is simple. I know some people will be upset about it. Good riddance to the Pac-12.
Can you do it in terms of the week to week to week?
I don't see a pathway for this team to miss the college football playoffs.
We want to make sure you have those best bets in the entirety of our betting cards. That was Lincoln! But he had that program was already going there!
Only on SportsGrid.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all. Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching!
Why? Because it's parody.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this once? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
When you look at Marcus Johnson, when you look at Nikola Jokic, these aren't guys that are big, super athletic, dunking and jumping over people. These are just guys that are clean, skilled footwork, and do things below the rim that make the everyday guy look like and be like, I can do that. But you can't, and neither can I.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Live right here on the Early Line on SportsGrid. We welcome you to our third and final hour. It is hour number 3 on this Tuesday on TEL. He is Joe Ranieri. I am Ben Stevens. One more hour to go. We got to discuss something as we get ready for Thanksgiving in the NFL in just a matter of moments. Then we'll hear from the people. We'll talk some college football ahead of the 4th unveiling of the CFP rankings tonight after yet another chaotic weekend in CFB. We'll talk more early season tournament action in college basketball. Feast week continues on this Tuesday. We'll chat with Jon Rothstein later on in the show, and we'll talk some NBA Cup, a busy third and final hour. But, Joe, before we hear from the people, I did just want to bring this up to get your assessment on it. The Dallas Cowboys are a 4-7 football team that won a game they should not have last week in Washington against the Commanders. We understand all of that, but the Cowboys are still not a good football team. And don't just take my word for it. Jerry Jones understands that. Of course, he was the guy that did not renew Mike McCarthy's contract despite bringing him back for yet another season. Now, Jerry Jones making his weekly appearance on the radio stations that he owns down there in Dallas. 105.3 The Fan said he's not ruling out a contract extension for head coach Mike McCarthy, and this is the rationale. Quote, I don't think that's crazy at all. This is a Super Bowl winning coach. Mike McCarthy has been there and done that. He has great ideas. We got a lot of football left. End quote. The Dallas Cowboys, of course, will be at home in our second of 3 games on Thanksgiving, hosting the New York Giants.
Well, yeah, and I think he mentioned that, Ben, simply because they just pulled off the shocking upset of Washington, right? So you're not going to bury the guy when the feelings are good in the building coming off of that win. I mean, he does have a point that the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. However, it is Jerry Jones we're talking about, and the names that are available that are free agent head coaches this offseason here, there's just far too many other Super Bowl winning coaches that Jerry would love to make a splash with. So I understand why he framed it that way, but I don't believe it for a second.
Yeah, I don't believe it for a second either, because if you want to frame it that way, get it done when it actually matters, extend the guy,
right.
Show him some confidence before the final year of his contract, not have him be the lamest duck of all lame ducks we have ever seen in the history of warm seats around the National Football League. Mike McCarthy is gone. There's no ifs, ands, and buts, despite what Jerry Jones might try to tease his fan base with, who, by the way, would absolutely despise that decision. There is a chance, though, which is odd enough, Germanary, the Cowboys more than a field goal favorite at home on Thanksgiving against the Giants. The Dallas could be like 5-7, and would there be a thought that Dallas could contend for a playoff spot? I hope not. I hope there is an understanding of where the Cowboys are as not a good football team who pulled off a surprise, but that is not sustainable. It is just interesting for Jerry to make these comments now. The guy knows what he is doing. He is a showman, to say the least. He got us to talk about it on a Tuesday morning. Mike McCarthy's not coming back to the Star.
Yeah, how? And no, it's not. Nice, Jerry, coming off a win. I don't think he would have said it that way had they lost that game against Washington. But,
for sure not.
You know, Jerry, let's see what happens if they lose to the Giants. Let's see if he's still framing it that way on the Tuesday interview next week, Ben.
That will be a very different mentality, I would say, Joe,
yes.
If Tommy DeVito heads into Jerry World and pulls off an outright upset over the Cowboys on their day on
Everybody else has. Everybody else is beating them in Jerry World. Why not? Why not Tommy Cutlets?
Dallas has not won at home this season, nor have they covered a number at home this season. All right, now let's talk some college football on the fourth night of everybody's favorite exercise, the college football playoff rankings reveal. These will be the numbers that will lead us in to the regular season finale of this college football season. And then we'll do it one more time before, actually, I don't even know if we do it next week. No, I think we do. Going into conference championship weekend, and then the one that actually matters, that being Selection Sunday. Joe, there's been a lot of conversation in this ever-changing landscape of college football. Everybody was so pleased with expansion because the actual games, the results on a football field, the play would speak for itself. But then we normally advocate for chaos. We have seen a ton of chaos that has left some being like, ugh, did we get expansion right? It's the question we wanted to ask the people here in Fade the Public. At SportsGrid on Twitter, is 12, the right amount of teams for the college football playoff? Your three options for a response: yes, no, but there should be more teams; no, should be less teams. Most of the public, and I am pleased to see, more than 55% of the votes still saying that as of right now, despite maybe some recency bias, that yes, 12 teams is the correct amount for the college football playoff. Germanary, are you fading the public?
Can I put a to be determined here? Because something clearly tells me, Ben, there's going to be two teams, maybe three at the top of this list that are clearly better than the other 8 or 7 teams that are going to make this list. When you think about it, we're really going over 3-loss SEC teams as to whether or not they deserve to be in. Is an 11-1 Indiana team really good? I mean, listen, I agree with the public that I think the 12 team is where, if you're going to expand it, that's the right number.
Yeah.
But I still was skeptical to begin with, and I'm still skeptical right now that we are truly have 12 teams that are close to being on equal footing. I don't see it that way. I still think it's going to be top heavy with 2 or 3 teams at best that can actually run the table and win a national championship.
And so, Joe, I've always been a fan of expansion. I thought 4 teams was a little bit too limited. I actually think 12 is the sweet spot for expansion since we have expanded the college football playoff. But there are some issues with it because I think a lot of people look at what happens in March Madness, right? A college basketball season, a tournament to end out a year where the regular season still has its importance. Your resume still stands as the defining factor for if you are in the field or not, and then pure chaos. But in college basketball, there are now 364 Division I men's college basketball teams. Same story, of course, on the women's side. Things can be the great equalizer in college hoops that we do not see in college football, which has been much more top-heavy than anybody would care to admit. And might we see, as this bracket plays out, even after the 12-team field has been established, still the best of the best win games and maybe by a lot to get to the semifinal and championship round? I do believe so. Let's not also forget, in the 4-team era of the college football playoff, the average margins of semifinals outside of last year was close to 3 touchdowns. Here, actually, we'll just roll this over on the other side of the break because we're going to talk some college basketball and we'll continue with the college football conversation. I agree with the public. 12 teams is correct in terms of expansion. So that was the hypothetical question. Now to how the odds makers would lay out the college football playoff if the season ended today before our 4th set of rankings. That's that.
Together, both Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the 2 big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Quarterly, I missed you pinching your own cheek as I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
So we had the college football playoff conversation. Is 12 teams the right amount for the expanded CFP in a year that has been defined with chaos in college football. We'll see the results by the time we get to the college football playoff. How much more competitive are our opening round games? Into the quarterfinal round, the semis, and of course, a national championship. Will the cream rise to the top? Yes, it often does. Even in college hoops, by the way, early round upsets still generally lead to a 1 seed winning it all when all is said and done, as we saw last year in college basketball once again. But, Joe, as we get ready for the 4th unveiling of the college football playoff top 25 tonight from the eyes and minds of the selection committee, here's how the odds makers stack it up. Not many changes, despite all of the chaos that we saw last week, at least in what the buys would be. Those opening round buys for the 4 highest out of the 5 highest ranked conference champions. Oregon, the price is too good. It's off the board. In fact, not as many CFP prices at this moment. Texas is, with a win, going to play in the SEC championship against Georgia. But the Longhorns still have to beat A&M in the renewal of the Lone Star Showdown on Saturday. Boise State, still the hefty favorite to win the Mountain West. A better price to reach the college football playoff than that of Miami. So Boise, according to the odds makers, would be the 3 seed. Miami would earn that final opening round bye, but be the 4 seed.
Yeah, it's going to get real interesting here, Ben. The good news for a lot of these teams like, Indiana, even Penn State, Notre Dame, a lot of good news here, given the fact that in one weekend, Ben, we were talking about 5, maybe even 6 SEC teams battling for spots. Well, Alabama lost by 21 to Oklahoma. Ole Miss lost to a 5-5 Florida team, and A&M lost to a 4-6 Auburn team. So guess what? All of a sudden, your 1-loss Indiana team getting in. Notre Dame, doesn't matter who you played, you're getting in. Maybe the greatest weekend for the entirety of those teams just happened because the SEC threw up all over themselves. Having said that, those numbers are pretty square. I mean, that's pretty much, I think that list of teams you're looking at is exactly what the 12-team playoff is going to be.
It has been rather defined now, Joe, based on a chaotic Saturday that saw 3 top 15 SEC teams go on the road, all booked as a favorite, and lose to a team that entered the game at 500 or worse. So really just look at the SEC this year and tell me it is a vaunted gauntlet of a conference. It is not. This year, does it have the history and the pedigree? Sure. This year, no. Indiana lost big in Columbus and then still won the weekend because of the chaos in the Southeastern Conference. Notre Dame has been a wagon against non-MAC teams. That price rather defined to get into the college football playoff. Indiana's going to move back in the rankings, probably from 5 to 8 or 9 tonight from the College Football Playoff Selection Committee. Could Indiana now be in danger of, despite earning an at-large bid, not hosting an on-campus CFP game? Certainly. I think that feels fitting. But again, a lot of these teams, based on resume, based on win-loss record, based on quality wins against Power 4 bowl-eligible teams, not just strength of schedule, it's an important metric, not the only metric, just so everybody knows that. These are going to be how the games play out. By the way, the final 2 spots based on the odds makers would have Tennessee at minus 480, one of the few SEC teams now only with 2 losses this year, and SMU. That, I think, Joe, more important than Indiana, Penn State, or Notre Dame, was maybe the more defining part of the chaotic Week 12 or Week 13 slate in college football. The fact that the ACC now very likely seems in line to get multiple bids to the college football playoff when that did not seem to be the case entering the final few weekends of this year.
Yeah. I think the only remaining question, Ben, is how does the committee view Tennessee? That's the only, I think, question that we really have. I think SMU has already punched their ticket to the ACC championship. I think if they win, obviously they're in. I think Miami, all they have to do is beat Syracuse, and I don't think it really matters what happens beyond that particular point for them. You're going to get one Big 12 team in, Ben. Who is it going to be? Arizona State? Is it, or who? Who's it going to be in the Big 12? Because I have no clue at this point who's winning that conference. And that's the craziest thing to me.
There are 4 teams right now, German with a 6-2 record in Big 12 play. All 4 teams are at least a slight favorite in the final weekend of this college football season. That if all 4 teams win, it's Arizona State and Iowa State in the Big 12 championship game.
Crazy.
Iowa State is the slimmest favorite of any of those 4, and only a 2.5-point favorite against Kansas State in Farmageddon. Oh boy, oh boy. Right now, though, ASU would be in the college football playoff field with the best price out of Big 12 teams to see the college football playoff plus 134. Basically the same exact price, Joe, for the Sun Devils to win the Big 12 title at plus 135. They have to play Arizona in the Territorial Cup on the road in Tucson. Has not been a great year for the Wildcats, but wow, would they love to spoil an Arizona State successful season on Saturday. We asked Rashawn White, former Sun Devil, about it. He still said ASU going to play and win a Big 12 championship. Oh boy, a lot to be defined in this final weekend of the regular season. Joe, we'll get into some more college basketball on the other side of the break. We'll talk some NBA Cup as well, but let's dive into this here. Duke, Kansas, tonight in college basketball, not in the Maui Invitational, not in the Players Era Tournament, but just a standalone top 10 tilt in Las Vegas. You see the number there. Duke, 3.5-point favorite. Duke's still 11 in the country, so just a top 15 tilt, if you will. Duke, 3.5-point favorite. Total 148.5. Let those numbers sear into your brain, Germanary, as we continue our college basketball handicaps on the other side of the break. We'll also talk some NBA Cup here in this third hour as well on a Tuesday on the early line. Stay tuned.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With 2 former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Quarterly, I missed you pinching your own cheek as I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you goes here on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Together, both Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the 2 big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
What a night in college basketball we have in store. The Maui Invitational. In the opening day of it, really set the stage for what it means now firmly into Feast Week. And even the teams that were upset yesterday or lost the game they should have won, as we saw dramatic comebacks in 3 of the 4 out in the Lahaina Civic Center, those teams now in the losers bracket but still get to play, maybe not for a tournament title, but still a couple of marquee wins on the early season resume. Then there's the Players Era Tournament in Las Vegas as well. A deep field there, and just a standalone game in Las Vegas, because why not at this time of the year in college basketball? Number 1, Kansas, and number 11, Duke. But the top team in the country, Joe Ranieri, not the favorites out in Sin City. It's the young Blue Devils, 3.5-point favorite, taking on KU. 148.5 is the total. Of course, Duke, the win over Arizona over the weekend, in which Cooper Flagg poured in 24 points. A blue blood battle in Las Vegas. What's your favorite play?
Well, you're probably looking at that, Ben, going, wait a minute. So Kansas is number 1 in the country at 5-0, playing Duke, and they are not the favorite. They're actually getting points. And the reality is, when you dive into the numbers, you know, KenPom has Duke ranked 5 spots ahead of Kansas in a bunch of different categories here, Ben. And the reason being is, listen, Kansas has played a cupcake schedule, and we know that. We also know that, we've got a situation here with Duke just traveled out west last week, Ben, did they not? Who'd they beat? Pretty darn good Arizona team on the road. Yeah. And they're a top 5 team defensively right now, Duke. And I think when you look at a team like this, you know they've got the scoring, but my goodness, can they play some defense? And Kansas, I love Kansas from the standpoint of Ben, and we always talk about depth. Kansas has got a ton of depth. But the problem is Bill Self is using this time of year, you know what, Ben? To try to figure out what the hell those rotations are going to be when it matters the most. So, yeah. I get why the market thinks Duke's the better team here, and they're laying points in a neutral place. But Duke has already proved they can go out west, lock you down defensively, and make the tough shots. I think they can do that again here tonight. It would be Duke or pass for me in this one.
Yeah, so listen, both teams have played 2 power conference programs. Kansas has only played 1 ranked team. That was North Carolina in the Fog in game number 2 of this year. In fact, the only game for KU that has gone over a number. They did not cover against North Carolina, 8-point home favorite. That game decided in the final minutes after a crazy rally from UNC. Duke has played 2 power conference programs. They lost to Kentucky. They beat Arizona in Tucson. Joe, both of those games under, and very well under. Duke's defense against the best of the best has been maybe one of the most impressive things about this young Blue Devil squad this season. I kind of lean under 148.5. Let's talk Players Era Tournament in Las Vegas. Elsewhere on the Strip, Creighton still in the top 25 despite losing to Nebraska on Friday. 3.5-point favorite against San Diego State. This a rematch of an Elite 8 game from 2 years ago. A&M and Oregon. Keep an eye on Jackson Shellstad, one of the best players in the Big Ten for the Ducks. The Aggies a 3.5-point favorite. Top 10 tilt, Houston and Alabama. The Tide an underdog for the first time this season. Notre Dame and Rutgers as well out in Las Vegas. Rutgers lost to Kennesaw State on Sunday. How will the young crew for Steve Peichel, respond in Las Vegas?
Yeah, no, there's some questions, and I love, Dana Altman and Oregon, and you mentioned it there. You want to give me a bucket? You want to give me, 2.5, 3 points in this game here and what I think is going to be a coin flip game? I will take Oregon all day long in what should be the battle of all those games on the board. I think that's going to be the biggest one.
It's going to be a good one. A&M has actually played a rather difficult schedule, so shout out to Buzz Williams to book it as such in the opening 3+ weeks of this college basketball season. Oregon did beat Oregon State. The Bees entered that game unbeaten in Corvallis last week. Oregon won by 3, did not cover as a 6.5-point favorite. Here are the odds, by the way, to win the Players Era Tournament title. Houston, that slight favorite. They take on Alabama today. What a game that is going to be. Tenacious defense from Kelvin Sampson and the Cougs, and a high-flying offense out of Alabama. Maui Invitational Tuesday next.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With two former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Quarterly, I missed you pinching your own cheek as I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the two big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Live right here on the Early Line on SportsGrid. We get you set for a huge Tuesday on the hardwood. We end out our Maui Invitational preview. We'll talk to Jon Rothstein in our next segment, and we'll talk some NBA Cup. Only 5 games in the in-season competition around the association. Not as robust as we have seen the last few weeks. But now let's get to the Maui Invitational. So we saw those fantastic 4 games yesterday. Dramatic comebacks in 3 of the 4. 3 of the 4 decided by just a single bucket. 2 points to be exact. So now you have the winner's bracket and the loser's bracket. Well, even if you don't have a chance to contend for the Maui Invitational trophy, you can still add a quality win to the early season resume and have an opportunity tomorrow to add another one. Let's start with the winners, though. Michigan State, the only team that comfortably cruised to a victory yesterday. The only favorite, in fact, to cover. They did as a 7.5-point favorite against Colorado. They won that game by 16 despite struggling from deep. A slight underdog today, Joe, against Memphis. Top 15 tilt. It's Auburn and North Carolina. Both teams, dramatic rallies in the second half. Auburn down by 16 at the break against Iowa State. Janai Broome, the game-winning tip-in with just a few seconds remaining in regulation. North Carolina down by as many as 21 points early in the second half to come all the way back and beat Dayton by 2, 92-90. Auburn, the slight favorite. They were actually the favorite of 3.5 points yesterday, so Iowa State did actually cover.
Yeah, it's the interesting thing here with Memphis and Michigan State to kick it all off here, Ben, is, listen, Izzo has had a tremendous amount of success at this Maui Invitational over the years. Why? Because he knows exactly how to navigate his teams in this spot. That was a wire-to-wire, no-brainer layup against Colorado yesterday. Now he's got to get these kids to go up against a Memphis team that just had to lay it all out on the line. And that's the question, Ben, is what does Memphis have left after an emotional overtime win against the defending two-time national champions here in UConn? And don't forget, they have a trio of guards, Memphis. They are 6 deep, Ben. That's it. When it comes to depth, Memphis doesn't have any. They got 6 players that all laid it all out on the court. Michigan State, however, took their time, did what they had to do. They'll be ready for blood in this one. I think Michigan State rolls Memphis in this one.
Could we see this game under 153.5? The Spartans have now flipped to a favorite as well. First half money line for Sparty, minus 118. Yep. Exhaustive and extensive overtime battle for the Tigers. Michigan State was just waiting, went out there and handled Colorado by 16. Auburn and North Carolina. That total is up there. And both teams played in high-scoring games yesterday. But Auburn butters its bread really on the defensive side of the floor. 165.5. Might we see that come down playing day after day? It's also part of the beauty of these early non-conference tournaments, Joe, because it resembles, in a way, the NCAA tournament or a conference tournament at the end of the year. You don't often play in back-to-back days in the NCAA tournament, but in conference tourneys you do. How do you carry momentum over one day to the next?
Yeah, well, you keep running your game, right? And what is North Carolina's game? It's pace. It's tempo. It's going to be running up and down the floor. I was shocked that Dayton didn't try to slow that game down last night, Ben. I can't believe they got into a track meet with him. I don't think Auburn's going to try to slow him down. I think Auburn's going to do what Auburn does. I think they are going to try to go up and down the court with him. It feels like there'll be plenty enough possessions and three-point shooting in this game to, in fact, look at the over with two teams that have no problem playing in games that can be a track meet. And I think this is going to be one of them.
Yeah, that really could be the case. I actually would lean under for Connecticut, 15.5-point favorite, and looking to bounce back against Colorado. UConn had gone under in every single game until yesterday against Memphis when things got crazy. And if Dan Hurley continues that passion, let's say, for this sport, maybe it starts on the defensive end of the floor. Iowa State, 8.5-point favorite against the Dayton Flyers, a tournament team a year ago out of the A-10. Let's get to Tuesday NBA Cup action. Only 5 games, Joe, as we look around the association. And we have made it to certain stages in the NBA Cup where a lot of teams have played multiple group games. Of course, you will play 4 in total, 5 teams in each group, 3 groups in each conference to determine if you can advance to the quarterfinal and knockout round. Let's start in East Group C, where the Bulls have won a game and lost a game. And the Wizards, as they have done in NBA Cup or just regular season games, have lost a ton. In fact, both. Chicago 5-point favorite in the nation's capital. The Bucks and the Heat, Miami a slight home favorite in South Florida. That's our action in the Eastern Conference on NBA Cup Day Tuesday.
Yeah, Miami is a small favorite there, trying to get it back together. Keep an eye on who's playing and who's not playing for Milwaukee at this point. But Rozier looks like he is ready to get going in this one here. And Giannis, kind of uncontrollable. But Bam Adebayo's done a pretty good job against him over the years. I like the Heat at home, and there is no way, Ben, we can back the Wizards. I don't care how many points they're getting in that spot against the Bulls.
East Group B, Milwaukee has used the NBA Cup, if you will, to kind of turn around its season. Yep. They are a perfect 2-0. The Heat 1-1. Milwaukee, just in general, has won 4 straight in 6 of its last 7. Now the 3 games in the Western Conference side of things on this NBA Cup Tuesday. The T-Wolves 3.5-point home favorite against the Rockets. Minnesota has not been great in the NBA Cup, just 1-1. The Rockets are 2-0 in West Group A. And then we've got some action in West Group B. The Jazz, a slight home underdog against the Spurs. The best game of the night, late night in the Valley. The Suns, 3.5-point favorite against the Lakers. Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal set to make their return. KD talked about the NBA Cup last year, of course, the inaugural season of that IST, and how much he enjoyed the games. We'll see if it means a lot to him tonight as he returns to the floor to welcome in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I got to tell you, though, I think the game of the night is going to be this Rockets-Timberwolves game. The Rockets have quietly now become a legit top five defensive team, Ben. They're not running and gunning anymore here. They are actually picking their spots, and they're doing a heck of a job of protecting the rim and doing what they need to do here in order just to win games. I don't think Minnesota has quite figured out what they're doing post-Cat and how they're going to do the rotations here. They're also not an extremely fast-paced team at home, 16th in pace. Houston is 18th in pace on the road. Houston's 5-2 to the under. 5 of those games only hitting 215 points or less. I like the under. I think that's going to be a defensive slog of a game.
The Rockets this year, Joe Ranieri, an underdog just 4 times. They are 3-1 against the spread, 2 outright victories, all 3 covers for Houston as the dog. Under a total. Houston, third best record in the Western Conference at 12-6. The reigning Western Conference finalists, if you will, in Minnesota have been a little bit slower to start. The T-Wolves right now just an even 500 at 8-8. I like that look of under in that basketball game. KD makes his return tonight against the Lakers. Might the Suns cover at home? Phoenix has not been a great cover team this season.
No, they have not. But Ben, I like to fade these superstars coming back over extended absences in their first game because the market overreacts to their coming back. I would expect that the second game of Durant and Beal is the one I'll be looking to back, not this one.
Phoenix, the worst cover team in the Western Conference, 5-11 against the spread. Joe takes a break. I'll talk to Jon Rothstein. Then Joe will round out the show on a Tuesday on the Early Line.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With 2 former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Quarterly, I missed you pinching your own cheek. As I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the 2 big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
This might only be November, but this is feast week. And as we get you set for a gigantic Tuesday in college basketball, who better to join us? The answer to that simple question is nobody than Jon Rothstein, of course, with CBS Sports, and joining us on behalf of the FanDuel Sportsbook. Jon, as always, we appreciate the time. What a Tuesday we have in store, 2 days out from Turkey Day in college hoops.
You know, Ben, at some point today, we all just have to really take a look around, thank God, and be thankful for what we have on tap today from a college basketball perspective. I have said it before, and I'll say it again. Other than championship week, other than the NCAA tournament, Feast Week is the best week that we have during the college basketball season. Let's mange.
There is no doubt about it. And then you look at the games that we have. A feast, the entirety of it. Not appetizers, not hors d'oeuvres. We're talking a full 11-course meal all throughout this Tuesday. And, Jon, it got started yesterday out at the Lahaina Civic Center on a Monday in the Maui Invitational, which sets the stage for this Tuesday. Quickly on Monday, 3 of the 4 games featuring dramatic comebacks, overtime between Memphis and UConn, a rally at the end between Auburn and Iowa State. North Carolina down by as many as 21 early in the second half, comes all the way back to beat Dayton. When you look at the Maui Invitational on Monday and what this week means, in Lahaina, was that one of the best days you've ever seen in the Maui Invitational?
It felt like a dramatic day in the NCAA tournament, and I think if we were at a first-round site for the NCAA tournament and we saw 3 of 4 games finish in this type of magnitude, we would say it would be one of the best day ones in the history of the NCAA tournament. And, Ben, here's the thing, and you know this as well as I do. These teams are in quote-unquote a tournament the next couple of days playing for a championship, but these teams are also looking to be in a situation to build their resumes for the NCAA tournament, and no team has taken advantage of that more in the early season than Bruce Pearl and the Auburn Tigers. Right now, 2 days before Thanksgiving, this is what's on Auburn's resume. A road win against Houston at the Toyota Center, a neutral site win against Iowa State in Maui. Auburn has 2 more games in Maui, starting with tonight's semifinal matchup against North Carolina. And then on top of that, Auburn is going to play at Duke, play Purdue and Birmingham, and also play Ohio State and Atlanta. These are the types of opportunities on a potential non-conference schedule that lead to a team being a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament.
And, Jon, even if you don't have a shot at the Maui Invitational title now, being in the loser's bracket, you still have an opportunity for a marquee early season non-conference victory. So let's focus on the 2-time reigning NCAA tournament champion UConn Huskies. Just their second loss in non-conference play in the last 3 seasons. What resolve do you think we will see out of Dan Hurley's Huskies today against Colorado?
Major resolve, and I think we even saw major resiliency from UConn yesterday in a loss coming back at the end of regulation to force overtime, which obviously was spearheaded by Solo Ball's 3-point shot from the right wing. Look, UConn we knew wasn't going to have what it had last season or the season prior when it ripped through a chainsaw through butter and won back-to-back national titles. The question is, would UConn have enough? These are the answers that I got on Monday. Tarris Reed, the Michigan transfer, is going to be good enough in the middle, but UConn has to get better guard play in the backcourt. Dan Hurley told me a couple of weeks ago he needed St. Mary's transfer Aiden Mahaney to be somewhere in between what Tristan Newton gave UConn in his first year during the 22-23 season and what Cam Spencer gave UConn last year when the Huskies went 37-3 and won the national title. That, to me, is the big area concern for the Huskies.
And UConn right now, albeit in the loser's bracket, but as we look at the Maui Invitational odds quickly, Auburn, that Jon highlighted, already an outstanding resume in the first 3 or so weeks of this college basketball season. The favorites to win the Maui Invitational now on FanDuel at -130. Jon, let's go to the Players Era Tournament in Las Vegas because it is also a deep and robust field with many a top 25 tilt in Las Vegas, highlighted, of course, by that top 5 tilt tonight in Sin City, or top 10 tilt rather, that being Houston and Alabama. Is that the game that stands out to you above the rest?
Without question, Ben, this is a Final Four caliber game in Las Vegas tonight. And the thing, as a college basketball purist, that really frustrates me, that we have two Final Four games in the same city that will be overlapping. The Houston-Alabama game in the Players Era Festival, and also the Duke-Kansas game, which is going to tip off an hour later. This, to me, is a disservice to the sport, obviously at a time where the sport is very much at the forefront. I know that you've heard me say time and time again, college basketball needs more standalone games. I know that's not possible when we have this much inventory, but I do know this. Staggering these tip-offs, if the networks could work together, would be better for the sport. Because, Ben, you saw it yesterday when we had that afternoon tip-off on the East Coast of UConn and Memphis, and it was the only real game going on. There was nothing better. It was like the first day of Hanukkah.
It really was the first day of Hanukkah. And the Lahaina Civic Center, one of the great scenes in college hoops. We'll have the MGM Grand be the host of the Players Era Festival. And then at the T-Mobile Arena just down the strip, John, in this final minute of this segment, a top 15 tilt. Number 11 Duke and the top team in the country, number 1 Kansas. The Blue Devils, 4.5-point favorite against KU. What are you looking for most, John, in this top 15 tilt between the Blue Bloods?
Will Duke's defense continue to travel? When I spent time in Durham in the preseason, John Shire said repeatedly that he felt that this would be potentially his best defensive team since he's been at Duke. Ben, how about this? No player on Duke's roster stands less than 6'5". The Blue Devils held Arizona to 55 at the McHale Center in Tucson on Friday. Duke's defense, I think, will be the key in this game. I'm keeping a close eye on Common Malawach, the talented 7'2" freshman, against Hunter Dickinson. I believe Malawach is the X factor long-term for the team. So, Ben, you know what I think. It's only November.
It is only November. It's Feast Week. More of the early line next.
Sharpest football contest show in the land. The Las Vegas Football Contest Show focuses on Circa Sports Million, Circa Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With 2 former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Totally, I missed you pinching your own cheeks as I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma will do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the 2 big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in the early line here on the Sports Grid Network. I'm Joe Ranieri. Want to say a very happy holiday to you and yours as Ben Stevens off for the holidays now. He's got a plane to catch. We are getting ready for Mike Blewett stepping in for Craig Mish here at the Newswire coming up here in just a couple of minutes. But we are also getting ready, of course, for the last week of the regular college football season here. Week 14, rivalry week. And the star of this week is really going to be, especially from a rivalry standpoint, is going to be South Carolina taking on Clemson. And there is some potential, depending on what we get from the College Football Playoff Committee here tonight and the rankings. There are certainly some implications here, especially if South Carolina goes ahead and beats Clemson. And then, of course, South Carolina will be in the discussion, depending on what happens across the board in some of these other games. South Carolina could have beaten Alabama, should have beaten Alabama in Tuscaloosa last month there, but unfortunately fell a little bit short. But many people talking about South Carolina being maybe that dark horse as an extra team coming out of the SEC. Now, Clemson, they need help. Clemson's got to beat South Carolina, but they have got to hope that Syracuse beats Miami to give them an opportunity to be able to sneak into that ACC title game. I do think Notre Dame's college football playoff hopes going to get a real test this week on the road against USC. And then, of course, Ohio State, coming off of that big win against undefeated, or what was undefeated, Indiana at home. Well, they're going to look to end a important streak, and that is the losing streak against Michigan here. So Ohio State coming in right now, or currently, it's the number 2 team in the country. Look at that number, laying 20.5. And what makes rivalry week so interesting is just that. It throw out the records, throw out the spreads. It doesn't matter. This week, this is, for many of these underdogs, actually all of the underdogs on the card this week in week 14, throw it all out the window. This is their national championship game. And Michigan, obviously, coming off the national championship season a year ago, has gone through some overhaul here. And the one thing that we all know about Michigan and Ohio State is this is the one game that has been circled from the start of the year. And I promise you, Michigan would love nothing better than to once again dash the hopes and dreams of Ohio State Buckeyes fans. So this is going to be an absolutely epic game. Auburn and Alabama, the Iron Bowl, we all know the history between these two teams. Auburn coming off the improbable win against Texas A&M, who might just have been looking ahead to their matchup this week against Texas, number 3 versus number 15. The SEC got thrown for a loop. The bottom line is when you get Alabama getting its 3rd loss to a 5-5 Oklahoma team, and then you've got Texas A&M also losing outright to a 4-6 team in Auburn. There is some head scratching going on, and of course, Ole Miss lost to a 5-5 Florida team on the road. All 3 of those teams now find themselves on the outside looking in, which is why South Carolina's game against Clemson is going to be very interesting. And tonight, when the committee releases its weekly rankings, I'm going to be very interested to see exactly where Tennessee lies. Because Tennessee, to me, is going to be one of those teams that doesn't necessarily rack up the same kind of resume, although they've got some decent wins. They've also got some terrible losses. But where does the committee see that? And is Tennessee traveling to Nashville to take on Vanderbilt? Will that be a big enough win in that game? If they do win, will that be enough for the committee to slide them in? There's a lot of questions that have to be answered here this week. Week 14, chaos can ensue, and we all love chaos in college football. It was great when there were 2 teams. They were great when it was 4 teams. It's even better now that there are 12 teams vying for the playoff spots. All right, get ready. Early line will be back tomorrow. We've got Mike Blewett in the chair for Greg Mish. Newswire coming up next. Enjoy the games. The early line will see you again tomorrow here on The Grid.